Before we get into the conversation, first, we are recording today's event. And if anyone, if you've registered for today's event and there are other people in your office that might be interested in hearing the conversation, please, if you've registered, we're going to send you a link of the event. So please feel free to share it with others in your office, or really anyone who you think might be interested. To introduce myself, I am Stephanie Cronin. I'm the Executive Director of the Middlesex 3 Coalition. For those of you who don't know the Coalition, we are a regional economic development organization that brings the public and the private sector together to address some of those larger business development concerns that are difficult for one community or one company to address on their own. Pre-COVID, transportation was certainly the largest issue that we heard from the business community, which is why we created the Middlesex 3 Transportation Management Association with the help of Transaction Associates. And there are 15 transportation management associations in Massachusetts. We work together with MassCommute to provide transportation resources and to really create sustainable transportation options for workers, for employees. And so I'd like to thank the TMAs and MassCommute for the help in promoting today's event. And if you are a TMA, or if you're part of a TMA, you work with one, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to use the chat box to know who's out there, what transportation resources you're using. If you have any questions, any comments, we want to make this a webinar so that people can sit back and eat their lunch in peace and just focus on the speaker, but we also want to make it interactive. So please use your chat box during the webinar with any comments or questions. Or actually questions I think we probably should handle in the Q&A as well too, but we want to make it, we want to hear from you guys and know who's out there as well too. And if you want to connect with other people who are out there, please put your contact information and let us know who you are and why is this important to you and what you guys have been doing in this area as well too. So with that, I want to get into today's conversation. I want to first start by thanking Lynn Garone. Lynn, are you out there? If you want to pop on for a second. Lynn heads the corporate learning and social responsibility at E-Inc. And she really pulled this meeting together. I'm not supposed to have favorite companies since I run a membership organization, but if I did have favorites, E-Inc would certainly be one of them. They really helped us to start our TMA. They are a great community partner, and they put into practice really what a lot of us are talking about doing. So Lynn, thank you for all your work. Kudos to everything going on at E-Inc. And we're going to bring Lynn back after Adam and Holly talk to give us some examples of what they've been doing as well too. And Lynn has also offered to be kind of the local resource that after today's event, we're all kind of moving on. And if you have questions and you want to bounce ideas off of her, just talk with her about some of the things that you might be thinking about doing. We're going to include Lynn. Lynn will come back later and kind of give us some updates and provide some information. So thank you, Lynn. Thank you. And I'm going to continue to move backwards from the agenda and introduce Dr. Holly Parker, the director at the University of New England Institute of North Atlantic Studies. And Holly's going to give us some details about really some real world examples of sustainable practices and how to motivate organizations and employees to adopt more sustainable policies. So Holly, thank you for joining us, and I look forward to hearing more. And again, I know Holly, you mentioned you wanted this to be more interactive as well too, but we'll get to that as well too. But before we do that, I do want to hand it over to Adam Roy Gordon, who is the Engagement Director for the United Nations Global Compact US Network. He's going to give us really an overview and really some details also of the UN Global Compact Network and why it's important to all of us. So Adam, Holly, Lynn, thank you for joining us today. And with that, Adam, I'm going to turn it over to you if you want to pop back up here and there we go.
Okay, and forgive me, I was stealing a bite of food in there.
Good, I know it's lunchtime. Good for you, good for you. So thank you for joining us. Oh, I'm going to stop my share.
So let me just see if I can share my screen. Okay, can you see that?
Perfect.
Okay, let me put it on.
Well, okay, wonderful.
There we go.
Great, and thank you for joining us, and I'm going to hand it all over to you now.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll speak for about 10, 15 minutes. This is going to be a brief introduction to the UN Global Compact, what it is, how we support companies, and how you can be involved if you'd like to do so. We've had the pleasure of working with companies in the Middlesex 3 area. In fact, one of the last meetings before our new reality was at E-Ink's office. I was able to present to the E-Ink team, and I'll remember that always as one of the last meetings before the pandemic. So really pleased to be participating here again today. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the United Nations Global Compact, we were founded by then Secretary General Kofi Annan in 1999. If you'll recall in our collective memories, the challenges we were facing, many of which we continue to face, but the idea in a world of increasing globalization, companies shouldn't wait for countries to create laws for them to follow, but should instead, as the Secretary General proposed, be committed to universal values and principles. And so the Secretary General at the time proposed a global compact between the private sector and the United Nations of shared values and principles. And from that, the United Nations Global Compact was created as a special initiative of the Secretary General's office. So in the mess of the large and bureaucratic UN where we sit, we're not an agency, we're in fact a special initiative of the Secretary General, report up into him, now under our 3rd Secretary General. So what is the Global Compact now? What is a commitment to these shared values and principles? So at the core of what we do are on the right-hand side of the screen, the 4 key areas of what we call our 10 principles. And the 10 principles are enumerated from 4 universal declarations: the Universal Declaration Against Corruption, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Declaration for Rights at Work, and the Rio Declaration for the Environment. And these really create the core of the commitment to the UN Global Compact. They are foundational to responsible business. And we now have over 14,000 companies around the world that have made a commitment to uphold them. Now, additionally, and more prominently on the screen here now, are the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, some of you may be familiar with these, others less so. So I'll provide a little bit of an introduction to them. The Sustainable Development Goals were adopted by the General Assembly of the United Nations in 2015 as a set of 17 goals that represent the collective ambition of the whole planet. All nations of the world have committed to this, and they're really quite momentous in a variety of ways. There have been UN-wide goals before, but these are quite expanded from what was done previously. And very importantly, they recognize that nation states aren't going to solve all the world's problems alone, that this is an all-world endeavor, and the private sector business are a critical component of that. So there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals representing our collective ambition for the planet. There are underlying targets and indicators. These are the KPIs for the planet. And if you're ever looking to understand how to align your company with this idea of how to create a more sustainable world, this is the roadmap. And in fact, they can be seen as a business plan, as an opportunity for where there's need and where business can help solve problems. So now with the Global Compact, you're not just committing to the 10 principles. We also ask that companies commit to the ambition of the SDGs. We don't expect companies to solve all the world's problems, or even one of the world's problems, but we do expect you to share in that collective ambition and to do what is material for your company in terms of having a positive impact or mitigating your negative impact. And so when you commit to the Global Compact, it is a CEO level commitment to the Secretary General. It's a public letter of commitment, committing to uphold those 10 principles and sharing in the ambition of the SDGs. As mentioned, we now have over 14,000 businesses committed in over 160 countries around the world. We are multi-stakeholder business-led, but we do have non-business signatories as well, and several thousand. And we have local networks, and I lead the US network. Now, the idea there is the the issues we're facing are fundamentally universal, global. But the context in which we engage with them is going to be really determined by the country in which we're working. And of course, at the UN, we do everything by countries. Of course, there's some more localization required in the US, but we're doing our best. And so the US network supplements and supports the global organization, is the face of the global organization in the US. We have US specific programming, and we're the first point of contact for US organizations for the Global Compact. And I think what is notable and worth bringing up is that when you look at those 14,000 plus companies committed to the Global Compact, there are over 87 million employees that are employed by companies that have made this CEO level commitment. And that in and of itself is meaningful. If nothing else, and we are many other things as well, but if nothing else, the UN Global Compact is a meaningful commitment to action. And to communicate that to your stakeholders, both internal and external, is an important way to rally the troops towards creating a more sustainable future through your business. Now, I've discussed the SDGs, but I think it's really important to note that we're not on track to meet them. Now, there are a variety of ways we could highlight here. The few that I'll choose to do are gender equality. I think, especially with the pandemic, but even before so, in the US and elsewhere around the world, we are not on track to closing the gender gap, the economic gender gap. And it is currently predicted that at the current rate of progress, it will take over 250 years to do so, which is not acceptable. In terms of responsible consumption and production, SDG 12, we're dealing with catastrophic levels of plastic pollution in the oceans. In terms of decent work and economic growth, 1 in 10 children, or nearly 1 in 10 children, are subject to child labor in the world. This is fundamentally unacceptable, and unfortunately, but we do need to recognize this, it does touch global supply chains. And then, perhaps most critically of all, climate action. We are facing a climate crisis. We are seeing great leadership from companies, from the public sector, from countries, but we are not on track to mitigate this catastrophic climate impact. And in terms of the social progress index, we're 62 years behind schedule in working to meet the SDGs. And to make matters worse, we have this global pandemic ongoing. COVID-19 has magnified all of the challenges that we face in terms of meeting the Sustainable Development Goals. Major job loss, GDP impacts, domestic violence against women, diverting resources from the critical climate response, and pushing people into extreme poverty around the world. COVID-19 is a crisis on a number of levels, but it is also risking a sustainable future. And so companies really do have a critical role to play in helping to create a better world. And I think there might be questions, well, okay, this is great, but what does that have to do with my business? And whether you're large or small, there's a role for business to help meet the SDGs, not simply because it is good for the planet, but it is good for business. And the business case is very clear. When companies embed sustainability into their strategy and practice, it improves a whole host of issues from customer loyalty, employee relations, operational efficiency, stakeholder management, and so on. There is now increasingly large amounts of data showing that embedding sustainability drives greater profitability, greater corporate valuation, and really excitingly lower cost of capital. And of course, this delivers ultimately longer short-term and long-term value to shareholders and society. This is good for business. And there's really no doubt about that right now. And it's quite exciting that to do the right thing is to do the right thing for business as well. So to touch a little bit on that financial performance piece, because there may be questions there. There are now a large number of studies, and in fact, this Arabesque University of Oxford study was a meta-analysis of 200 academic studies, shows that companies that are embedding sustainability into their performance, and in fact, have made a commitment to the UN Global Compact as an indicator of that, see higher return on equity, 50% lower costs on capital, 88% have better operational performance, and 80% better stock performance from these companies. So if there's any doubt, in fact, maybe the CFO at your company should be focused on sustainability actions, because this is how you drive financial performance, or at least a key way to do so. So where does the Global Compact fit into this? Of course, we're the vehicle for commitment. It's aligning your company with the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative, doing it in a very public way to the Secretary General. But we actually have a value proposition to help companies along their journey, no matter your size, sector, geography. We're here to help you on where you are in your sustainability journey. And that's connecting with industry experts, peers, folks at the UN to drive your performance, to learn more about sustainability practice. We have a huge amount of resources and programs and even accelerators, which I'm very pleased that E-Ink has gone through a few to support your practice. We help companies lead on sustainability, showing leadership and inspiring others, and we are able to do that with what is quite unique in the space is the UN stage. And of course, we help companies communicate their performance and leadership in a variety of ways. And so I'll leave you with one final quote. Of course, I could go on at length, as you can imagine. And this is a short introduction, but I do hope it's whet your appetite for understanding how sustainability might be an important driver for your business, but also how the Global Compact might be able to support you. And I'll end with a quote from our current Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. And that is that now, more than ever, as big decisions are made about our future, companies need to address environmental, social, and governance risks, ESG, holistically and move beyond business as usual. With that, I'd like to pass it on to my wonderful co-panelists. And I hope this has inspired you to think more about corporate sustainability at your business and how a commitment to the UN might further those ambitions. Thank you very much.
So good afternoon, everyone, from the beautiful state of Maine. I'm going to be sharing my screen with you. Right, and slideshow, play from start. All right, can everybody see that? Looking good. Okay, so welcome you all, and as we mentioned at the beginning of this, I know that this is a lunchtime event and people are eating, but I'm a recovering high school English teacher. My name is Holly Parker, and I'm the director of UNE North at the Institute of North Atlantic Studies. And I'm going to be asking you all to participate with me today using the chat function in our work today. So I'm going to be asking you to follow some prompts and to enter some of your thoughts in the chat function as we work through some of these concepts together and understand how we can take what is such an amazing global initiative that Adam just discussed and really make it, begin to think of it in the context and the place in which you all are working as business leaders. So first, a little bit about UNE North, the Institute of North Atlantic Studies at the University of New England. We were founded in 2018 to connect researchers, educators, and policymakers and industry leaders from across Maine and the North Atlantic region to implement collaborative approaches to building resilient communities, healthy environments, and thriving economies. So what I would like to do with you all, and I think I'm going to have to full screen share my screen here to make this work properly. But we're going to start with a brainstorm, and we're actually going to do this a little shorter. I usually do this for 2 minutes, but we'll do this a little bit shorter. And we are going to, in 2 minutes, I want you to help me solve one of the greatest waste problems that we have. We want you to be creative. There are no bad answers to this question. And so take the time to throw some things into the chat, your ideas about how we might solve this horrible problem. So just for 1 minute, brainstorm ideas to what should we or can we do with the world's single mismatched socks? So just take a moment and start putting some ideas in that chat function, which I'm calling up right now. So what can we do with the world's mismatched socks? Just to get the brains going here. I want to see some answers in that chat box. Yes, wear the mismatched socks. We've seen that. Yes, insulation, fantastic. Textile recycling, insulation for homes. That's wonderful. Yeah, let's break down these socks. What can we do with these wonderful socks? Draft dodgers. Yes, the door snake. Look harder. Thank you, Charles River. Any other thoughts of what we can do with this challenge? I do this project with students quite a bit. We've had everything from bird feeders to shredding them for animal cages, cat toys, fantastic. Cheryl, you must know my animals and my interns. Wonderful. Create gloves for babies. Wonderful. Yes. Yes. Meeting a need. Yes. How can we meet a need with this resource? Fantastic. All right. You guys are warmed up. I'm going to ask you to continue working with me today in the chat box. So briefly, a little bit about sustainable development and how we see it here at UNE North. It meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. It's predicated on the understanding of the interconnectivity and interdependence of human and natural systems. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. And it supports those resilient and thriving communities, economies, and ecosystems. So as Adam said, these are the Sustainable Development Goals as ratified in 2015. These are represented here in this grid format that we often see, and I'll be calling you back to this later today. But we see the SDGs here at UNE North for what they are and for what they are not. They are a framework that expresses a value system that Adam was talking about. It's also a toolkit for planning and assessment, and that's what we like to do here at UNE North with our own strategic planning, and also as we help other organizations do their own sustainability work. It's also a common language that is shared around the globe. When I travel, and hopefully I'll start traveling soon, all of my presentations and work are couched in this language, which really is universal. We don't see it as much in the US, but I'm hoping that through events like this, we will see more of it. But what the SDGs are not are just as important. They are not the value system in and of itself. So having them just be a box checking exercise undermines really the spirit of the SDGs. And again, they're not the solution. They are a way towards the solution. They're a way to measure that solution in our actions, but they're not the solution themselves. And finally, they're not universal in their application or expression, as Adam said. Really, they are a way of supporting sustainability in a global effort, but they are applied in a way that is context and place-based driven, even to the degree of the business that they're being applied in. So this is actually the graphic that we like to use for our use of the SDGs. And so we call this the layer cake. It comes from the Stockholm Resiliency Center. And you can see that they have placed the biosphere layer at the bottom of the cake as foundational to the supporting of society and economies. And so you see that this is kind of, you can take a slice of the cake at any given time with an action. You may be cross-cutting across economic, society, and environmental concerns. And running through the middle of the cake is my favorite, Sustainable Development Goal 17, partnerships for the goals. And that is our key value that we hold here at UNE North. We believe that we can be a great partner in sustainable development, but that we can't do it all by ourselves. And we really feel like that if we consider the cake, 17 really is the frosting or the jam that holds all the layers together. So another brainstorm, my friends. We're going to talk a little bit about leadership in the context of sustainable development. So to get you started, a couple of softballs. First, I want you to think of a leader or leaders who have impacted you. What skills or quality did that leader have? Please enter your ideas in the chat. Empathy. Passion, approachability, good listener. Excellent. Approachable at any time. Passion and concern. Knowledge, integrity. Yeah, ability to connect with everyone on some level. Fantastic. Patient. I struggle with that one myself. Other ideas. Yes, ability to engage others in a cause, ability to decide. This idea of a cause, this idea of a belief system or value system is so important. Decision makers, very important. So my next question is a little bit more introspective. How would your team describe your leadership style? I think my team would probably say that I do give energy to Stephanie's last comment. I think that I do bring the energy to the room. How would your team describe your leadership? Oh, got quiet. Collaborative, excellent. Thank you for stepping in. Open and responsive. Other ideas, this is tougher. It's harder to think of ourselves as leaders and how people see us. Problem solver. Any more ideas on this one? So we're going to start putting this in the context of sustainable development goals and how you might bring them to your business. Okay, we're going to move on. So my work in my research really looks at leadership skills and leadership training relevant to sustainability. And many of you who maybe you've been to B school or you've done some leadership coursework will see these classic leadership models and be familiar with them. Adaptive leadership, which is defined as leadership as a tool for change. Yet in that definition, change is undefined. It can be any change, but it is leadership as a tool for change. The servant leadership model derives its power and efficacy from a focus on motivation and self-knowledge. So some of you highlighted that in your comments. But again, the destination of that motivation is unclear. And then transformative leadership offers followers something more than just working for self-gain. They provide that inspiration or mission, so that value statement that some of you all talked about. But none of these models address the need to shift from an anthropocentric to a systems mindset, which is so key to sustainable development. I'm going to show you a little bit about why. So evolving your leadership mindset. Transformation is enabled by new ways of seeing root causes for the problems we are trying to solve. So seeing systems and how they interact and recalibrating our own value systems will allow for true innovation and resilience rather than reactionary adaptation. And in many ways, we need that transformation to reach the goals that Adam has outlined so beautifully. We can adapt to some things, but really we do need to transform the way that we are working and seeing. So to do that, we have this transformation chart. So anthropocentric mindset is placing the human systems at the center of our thinking, whereas a systems mindset is incorporating all of these systems, the biosphere, the social sphere, economic spheres, into one system interacting. We give up the human control of nature in this model and acknowledge the interconnectivity and interdependence of all of these systems. And we also give up the world interpretation through human values and experiences, and we interpret it via the interconnectivity lens. So we understand that every action we take as a human is connected to other systems, and we need to acknowledge that impact. So my research I've done some research in both higher ed settings and in business settings. And our research has really kind of identified a bit of a toolkit has been emerging from these conversations and interviews that we've been doing. First, we have the sustainability leaders who employ a systems mindset, as we talked about. They exhibit a cluster of skills grounded in a systems mindset, and this skill set is seen to the right. They persist in the face of opposition. This is not easy work. It requires oftentimes shifts in cultures as ways of seeing, and so that can be very challenging. They navigate hierarchies and collaborate with allies. This is vitally important in your work as you engage your entire company and all of your employees in this work. And they work in service of a more just and present future. So they have that inspiration and they are value driven. If we look at our skill set, you'll see that many of the skills you identified in the chat are combined here into that leadership toolkit for sustainability. You are engaging of teams and stakeholders. You identify stakeholder needs, high emotional IQ, you engage in complex problem solving, you're willing to challenge the status quo, and you communicate an inspiring message, and you demonstrate integrity of the system's mindset. So a lot of the language that you all had in the chat resonate here, but are clustered together specifically under this sustainability leadership toolkit. So one thing I always emphasize in our work here in Maine is that this work is done, yes, within businesses and within organizations, but we want to acknowledge that we do this work in the context of the problems of the people of the place. So as business owners, we're always trying to solve problems. We're trying to solve problems for our constituents, for our stakeholders, for our consumers. But we always want to remember that we have folks outside of our organizations that we can talk to about how they would like to see sustainability enacted in our practice. So I refer to the work of Tirza Poe, who is an advisor to me at UNE North. She's also an Inuit educator and scholar working out of Harvard and University of Maine, Orono. And she writes, the successful solutions we can develop to our most pressing environmental, social, and economic problems will be in collaboration with people and communities, especially those with the lived experience so critical to sustainable success. So my next question for you all, and this is a tough one. I offer you some visual prompts of the work we do here in Maine. These are some of my favorite photos. Of course, we have our iconic lobsterman here in the lower left-hand corner. We have the folks, our friends at the Casco Baykeeper, who do our environmental monitoring work. We have, of course, the Indigenous peoples of Maine, who we work alongside and with, and we have the diverse youth here in Maine, who will really help lead us forward. So my question for you, for this next little bit is, who are the people of the place? Who are the people around you in your communities who can help you develop sustainable solutions for your organization? If you were to reach out, who would you reach out to? This is a tough one. Excellent, local universities. Thank you, Lynn. Always good to look at your local universities. And I see UMass Lowell here is here today. Yes, neighbors, local homes, and other local businesses. Absolutely. Again, think about Sustainable Development Goal 17, partnerships. Who would your partners be? The local Transportation Management Association. Well done, Allison. Yes, religious institutions, faith-based institutions, municipalities, Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. This is all great. Keep going. These are great allies in this work for you as you move forward. Local nonprofits, Nashua River Watershed Association. Yes, your local conservation groups. Absolutely. Municipal youth, educators, seniors, and youth. Yes, we often find that folks who are often at the margins of these conversations, youth, seniors, have some of the best ideas for how to move forward. Large and small companies, yes, getting an idea of scale and how this can work. So one of the things we like to do when we engage a project here at UNE North is to really map out some of these stakeholder groups that we think would be interested in helping us define, explore, and even collaborate on implementing solutions that can be really meaningful and impactful. So you can see when you think about working with these different groups of people, how those leadership skills that we just talked about are so important to develop and foster both in your leadership team and throughout your enterprise. Yes, and Lynn, well done, the M3 Coalition. Very well done. And of course, you can always reach out to me at UNE North. So I want to do a little bit here about seeing the SDGs already happening in your company. One of the things that can be very intimidating about this work is you look at the sheer scale and scope of what we want to accomplish with the SDGs, and we think, where do we possibly start? Well, you've already started probably in most cases by making decisions, beginning practices, no matter how small in your organizations, that are related to the Sustainable Development Goals. So I want to share a little bit about where we do it here at UNE North. You see here this plane. We love to travel. I miss traveling, but carbon footprint is a big challenge, and I would not be a good sustainable development leader if I did not take into account how much I need to travel and the impact that it has. And certainly the pandemic has opened our eyes to how events like this and others can be impactful without being in place with people. That's not to say that it's a replacement, and I look forward to seeing people face to face, and I would love to see you all who are just my neighbors down to the south. So this plane really represents our commitment to climate action, Sustainable Development Goal 13. It also overlaps with other goals within the system. And on a much simpler note, coffee. We all have it in our institutions. We choose to have a coffee maker in UNE North. We will not have a Keurig. I just think they're evil. Just because they are such an incredible production of waste. And so for us, this decision is really a decision around Sustainable Development Goal 12, which is responsible consumption and production. And yes, this is a challenge. Somebody has to clean it. Somebody has to take care of it. We have to provide, obviously, with the coffee. It isn't as convenient, but it is something that we value here, and it's a way we express ourselves. So as you can see, my question for you now is, where do you see the SDGs currently expressed in your organization? And to help you with this, I'm going to back up the bus a little bit, and I'm going to show you that SDG chart so that you can work off of that for a minute or two, and you can put your ideas again in the chat. So don't get dizzy. I'm going to back up here just a little bit. Here you are. All right. So where might you see some of these SDGs already in action in your businesses and in your practice? Please put your examples and then maybe link them to a goal in the chat. Equity and inclusion community, excellent. So I'm thinking that that could be both number 5 and number 16. Do you have recycling? Do you have composting in your organization? Yes, 13, the TMAs, thank you, excellent. Also, I would argue that it probably has an impact on decent work and economic growth. These all overlap, and so you can kind of cluster around an idea, 2 or 3 goals. Good wages, number 1, volunteer hours, yes. Reducing inequalities, fantastic. Number 11, yes, incentives to carpool, take public transit, walk or bike to work. Waste management, good. So again, responsible consumption, sustainable cities and communities. I know you're doing more than this. I know you are. Think deep, dig deep. Number 4, fantastic. Tuition reimbursement, wonderful. Yes, excellent. Number 5, well done. Solar panels, hooray. We love solar panels. Awesome. So we're going to head back to our regularly scheduled slide, but I just wanted to give you an idea that you are not starting from ground zero with the SDGs. Supporting local community foundations, going paperless, please, yes. So let's head back to our destination here. Using e-ink technology, well done, Lynn. So yes, so I wanted to make clear that you're not starting from ground zero. So one of the first things that we help institutions and organizations do is take the really clear inventory of where the SDGs are already happening and already being expressed. We did a wonderful event here at UNE last year with our students where they did an SDG scavenger hunt, running around campus with iPhones and taking photos of examples. And it was really a great way to educate about the SDGs and also understand how we're already engaging with this work. So my last slide for you is imagining a sustainable future. So as we think forward a little bit, fast forward to 2031, 10 years down the road, what would you like your sustainable organization to look like? Think about those goals that we were just talking about. Are there things you would like to see? Don't worry about the obstacles. Don't worry about how you get there, but what is the aspiration? What would you like your sustainable organization to look like? I just entered one of my dreams into the chat, which I always love to have our larger institution fully divested from fossil fuels, as many other higher education universities are doing, and we certainly are moving in that direction. Yes, a reduction, a measurable reduction of the carbon footprint. And I know that's a huge concern for many of you. More diversity in staff and leadership, carbon neutral and zero waste, fantastic. Be aspirational. It's only by setting the goals that we get there. One of the things I would love to see outside of my office, which is I'm surrounded by 2 parking lots, but I'd love to be surrounded by 2 green spaces. Yes, switching to electric vehicles, more effective, more frequent transit service, better paratransit, lovely. Yes, thank you. Green space and reforestation, fantastic. Yes, diversity, equity, inclusion, soil regeneration, fantastic, yes. Any other ideas, visions that you have of what your sustainable workplace might look like? Are we talking jetpacks? What are we talking here? Car-free cities? Yes, Allison, well done. Yes, the reuse of wastewater. What can we do with our wastewater? Zero waste cafeterias. How about zero waste locally sourced cafeterias? Childcare options. Yes, a question of gender and equity. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing there. And I think we've done a great job today. Oh, wait, I have one more slide I want to show you. Hit the wrong button. All right. So this is your opportunity as business leaders. And I want to put this here as an opportunity. This is your opportunity to start building solutions with a new mindset. So it really is shifting the way we think and the way we see, and then start building the solutions from there. So it is a big challenge. It's an opportunity for you to build a team informed and inspired by that mindset. It's an opportunity to build solutions that address that interconnectivity between those human systems and natural systems. And then you get to tell the story of how you've contributed to a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable world. And so with that, I just want to offer you the opportunity that if you are interested in learning more about sustainability leadership and how we at UNE North can support your organization's sustainable goals, contact us. We do have a professional services operation here, and we would love to talk to you a little bit more. And with that, I want to hand it back to Lynn, who's been listening to all of this, and ask her what she would advise folks as e-Ink as a pioneer in this space with the UN Global Compact. What advice would you give folks who are looking to take the next step in developing a sustainability plan? So with that, Lynn, I will stop sharing and hand it to you.
Thanks, Holly. That was great. So there's really two approaches in my mind for companies along the Middlesex 3 and all companies really. I think we need to, think globally and act locally. So one thing that we did a few years ago was actually create a committee and sort of a group organically formed of people who are really interested and have already been thinking in terms of this mindset. So we basically call ourselves the R3 group, reduce, reuse, and recycle group. And we started thinking about ways what we could do in the building itself. And it's been slowed down a little bit because of COVID, because we weren't all in the building for a period of time. But that group is still active and looks at opportunities as well as education, because we do think educating our employees are so important. I think everyone has good intentions, but they might not know how to go about it. So I think that's a really important piece. And then in terms of kind of globally, we took the big step to join the United Nations Global Compact. And with that, tons of tools have been made available to us to look at how are we doing, like really assess where we are in terms of our SDGs. And there's several tools like that on the what they call the UN Academy. And with those tools, we've been able to say, look, this is an area we need to do better. And along with this tool, there's actually lots of suggestions and ideas and best practices to do better. So that was one of our first steps. And from there, once we started really getting engaged with the United Nations Global Compact, we've joined some of these very special programs that they've been running over the last 2 years. And the first program we got engaged in was the Young Innovators, Sustainable Innovators Program. And I think someone mentioned in the suggestions here about engaging the youth. Well, that is a great program because it really takes or looks for people, the young people in the organization, to sort of learn about the SDGs, bring it back to the company and come up with some innovative ideas of how to make improvements and start to look at how the company is doing. And that's one of the first things we did. And we did get a lot of great suggestions from our team of 3 young innovators from our company working on this. And from there, we joined the Ambition program, which made us look at what can we set a really, really aggressive target. And we're just in the process of sort of working out our plans in terms of how we're going to do that. This is a long-term project. This is not, tomorrow. This is more looking out, 2030, 2040, 2050 kind of time frame. And then most recently, we just joined the Gender Equality Program, where we've sent some of the women from the organization to learn about what we can be doing to make sure that we have equity with regard to the women in the organization. So we've done a lot of different things, some of them very mundane, like collecting the compost from the cafeteria, to being part of this very big organization and looking aggressively at a very long-term project.
So I'm going to jump back in if I could, Lynn, and first start by thanking everybody for the overview. Adam, I think that was a great business case and a great example of really what we can do to move things forward. And Holly, I give you credit because I think it is so difficult to have an interactive discussion via Zoom. So thank you for really getting our minds working. And Lynn, Thank you for the updates and some ideas of what we can do. I guess really I'm going to ask all three of you guys to jump back on again as well too, because if anyone has questions, I'd love to try to field some of those questions. We still have a few minutes left as well too. But I guess really my question would be, what's next? There's a lot. And Adam, I like how it's not, you lay it out that it's so many things that you can choose from. So I guess every company what's next would really depend on the company. But what are your suggestions? We walk away from today's meeting, and what do we do next?
So I think the question in there I'll answer is, where to start. And as you stated, it's going to depend on the company. And so I think the important place to start is functional and materiality analysis. Now that could be a formal process, or it could be somewhat informal, but understanding what is important for your company based on your sector, whatever product you might have, the areas in which you work, understanding where your company has impacts, positive and negative, and also where your stakeholders see you as having influence. So if you are, we're talking about Maine earlier, so let's take a fishing industry solution. If you're in a fishing company, you're going to be looking at the sustainability of your boating fleet, the impacts you have on responsible fishing. You're going to be looking at how you package the product and how you work with your suppliers on that. And that's going to look very different if you're in a defense company. I think the first step before you even take action is to understand where to start and to go through that formal process if you can. So that would be the best place to start if you were. Of course, I'll also note that commitments and setting the expectation that your company will perform well in one way or another is also an important thing to do. So while the UN Global Compact might not be right for every company, the idea of setting expectations on the level of ambition for your company. Once you know what's important for your company, is it reducing your company's emissions? Is it dealing with supply chain sustainability issues, product sustainability, setting clear goals? So I think those are the two main first steps.
Thank you. And we do have a question from Sue as well in terms of the SDG. So I'll open it up to everyone in terms of how interrelated are the toolkits and how can they address more than one goal with the same action? Does the compact offer specific assistance?
So we're not a consultancy, but we do have a lot of tools. And I encourage you to go to unglobalcompact.org. A large number of our tools and resources are available free of charge. In fact, actually, for the materiality analysis on the SDGs, I want to promote one specific tool, and that's our SDG Action Manager. In fact, it's designed to be really useful for smaller companies as well. It's a series of questions to determine where you might prioritize focusing on the SDGs for your company based on your sector, your impacts, etc. And then also will guide you to specific tools based on the materiality of the SDGs to your work. And so the question then is, can you address many things with fewer actions? I mean, of course, the SDGs are fundamentally interconnected. And I think a great example of that is by addressing gender equality issues, you are very likely going to be addressing climate action. And it's not obvious sometimes, but many actions can have many positive impacts across the SDG spectrum. And it's just understanding that and documenting and communicating that, which will allow you to effectively navigate multiple impacts with single actions. Nothing happens in a vacuum. You can't just touch one SDG without impacting others. And I think it's also important to note that you can take positive actions in some areas that inadvertently will have negative impacts in other areas. And so it's not simply that you could address multiple issues with one action in a positive way. You also have to recognize that there might be negative impacts as well.
Great.
And I think,
Go ahead.
no, I think what Adam was saying lends itself to this idea of, as we're doing this work and doing the very practical work of understanding material costs and systems, we also need to think about the leadership and the cultural shifts that need to happen in organizations in order for this to be truly transformative. So we can make immediate adaptations to serve a need, but if we want to perpetuate that and transform our businesses into something that truly looks at that interconnectivity that Adam is talking about, right? So that you see how the impact of action X has an impact, positive or negative, on another SDG, for example, we really need to think differently in how we lead and build cultures at our institutions. And so that's the work that we like to do at UNE North, is to work with companies to help set those frameworks up and explore those cultural changes and leadership goals that need to happen to accompany the actual practical work.
Great. And
And
I
that's
love
a good addition, Holly. Thank you.
and I was going to say, I love how you talk about the mindset too, and changing the mindset, because that's a lot of the work of the TMAs as well too. So it does go hand in hand. We have one other question as well too, that I want to combine it with my question as well, in terms of the different industries, and because we have a lot of companies from different industries that are represented here as well too. And are there certain industries that this works better with as well? And I'm also interested in, this is really for everyone, is it, should it be from the top up, or from the employees, I'm sorry, the top down, or from the employees up? Because Lynn, I know when we talked, and I can't believe that was pre-COVID, or that was so long ago, it seemed as though it came from the employees, and that's really why you were doing a lot of this work as well too.
That's where it started, but then we were able to get from the top down engaged and participating and promoting this. I think once the employees help push it.
Well, and I think it's another business case to make, Stephanie, that we are seeing the data that employees want to work for companies that are expressing this value system. And so in terms of recruitment and retention and what is a tough job market right now, it really is helpful to be able to demonstrate that in a real way.
Great. And any particular industry, or is it really, I guess it's so flexible, it goes across the board? You just
Adam says sustainability is for everyone. And that is absolutely true. It's for all of us, and and all of us really need to step up, in my opinion.
Right. And Lynn, I know you have a question for Adam as well too, so I'm just going to let you round it out.
Yeah, I was just
I
curious.
was just typing a response.
Okay, I've never seen that statistic, and that's a great statistic for me to use for operations teams. I want to hear a little bit more about it so I can use it at work.
No, of course, and I realize I actually may have misspoken, that it's a new slide. So it's not that you receive a 50% reduction in the cost of your capital, but rather 50% of the companies in the studies had a lower cost of capital. Nonetheless, it is notable, and you're increasingly seeing in corporate finance that whether it's on climate, gender, or other issues, you're seeing better cost of capital for companies that are aligning with ESG metrics. And you're seeing that more and more, that there's actually, even in corporate bond issuance, and this is the exciting space right now, green bonds, blue bonds, SDG linked bonds, these bonds are getting preferential pricing and are selling like hotcakes, candidly.
The pricing thing, it's what you can get in terms of rates, because the investors see it as a positive thing.
Exactly. Well, it's also lower risk for the lenders to be aligned with certain responsible companies, or it may also impact their own ESG goals as investors, of which they have many.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, and before I forget, Adam, I know we are planning on sending out your presentation to the group as well too, so people will have the SDGs that they can work off of. But with that, I don't want to keep people past 1 o'clock, so we're right there. So I want to thank Adam, Holly, Lynn for coming, for presenting. It's a lot of great information. I think this is the beginning of a conversation. Lynn, I know we talked more about having follow-up conversations, and we'll reach out to everyone who's registered, see if there's interest in just continuing the conversation with their peers as well too. And it's one of many steps. So we thank you for getting us on our way, and we appreciate all your help as well too. I think that's it. So with that, thank you everyone, and have a great afternoon. Good luck. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.